All right. Welcome to the March 19th, 2025 Planning Board meeting. Please join us in the flag salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so tonight we have two public hearings. We'll start first with Haney Auto LLC, map 27, lot 12, which is a conditional use permit for vehicle repairs and service. If you want to head up to the podium. All right, seeing as there's no one from the public here yet, did the board have any questions following our site walk earlier this morning or this afternoon?
Do you want to start with just giving like a general statement for anyone watching at home of what you're going to be doing there?
Yeah, hi. My name is Paul Haney. I'm proposing a automotive repair facility, general automotive, pretty much anything under that, state inspections.
All right. So I think while we were there, we talked about a couple different things. I think there was a discussion about exterior lighting. You don't have anything yet, but you are planning to put something on the exterior?
Yeah.
All right. Vehicle storage is going to be out front.
Out front.
How many vehicles do you plan on keeping there?
It's only going to hold 5 to 6 vehicles.
5 or 6. Okay. All right, I'm just getting to the questions here. Make sure we kind of run through most of them so we have all of our questions ready for when we deliberate later.
I had one quick question.
Sure.
You're not, you didn't have any plans to sell cars, right? Or in that kind of stuff, just repair?
No.
Okay.
If we did something like that down the road, we'd reapply for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a different thing altogether, I think.
Yeah,
in a way,
I mean, we're kind of limited for storage. We really can't have a used car lot or anything like that.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
All right. I think we talked about how your driveway kind of slopes pretty steeply towards the bays there. You had some future drainage plans there. Do you want to expand on what you're hoping to do there to control the runoff?
Basically, on the neighbor's side of the driveway, we'll be putting in some drainage in a collection pond in the back, just to collect anything that may leak or run off. And the driveway itself will be graded a little bit.
Yep.
More to that effect.
Okay. And right now it's kind of a mixture of like dirt and crushed stone.
Right. That was pretty much to get us through the winter so we can continue working on the building and getting that ready for this.
Okay. Do you have any plans to make that all crushed stone or pave that, or?
We're going to pave that.
Okay.
And it'll just be easier for public safety, just sanding wise and clearing of the driveway, and just be safer for the public to access the building.
And do you plan on having signage?
Yeah, we'll have a sign in front of the building, and as we talked, we'll have to pull permits if we're going to post any signs anywhere in the area.
I saw in your application that you still needed a fire extinguisher and an exit sign and a carbon monoxide detector. I saw the
Yep, that's
extinguisher
already
and I
there,
saw
yep.
the exit sign.
Yep.
I wasn't sure where the carbon monoxide was.
Yeah, that was actually up above that window towards the, well, if you're going in, it's on the right-hand side.
In your working hours, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday to Saturday. Don't plan to work necessarily outside of that?
No,
Okay.
no.
So I guess I have a question for Stan. Stan, do you want to? I just got a quick question for you. So question 14 here, it talks about having, a water supply that meets the demands of the proposed use. Does he have to have a water supply?
He does not. On the
Okay.
sidewalk, he said he didn't require water there, so
Okay.
he had no intentions of bringing water.
Gotcha. Okay, great. And, yep.
I don't mean,
Yep.
And then at the site walk, just to state it, he did say he had great relationships with the neighbors. So
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd like that to be said here as well.
You had talked about how you're going to keep kind of the areas around the building clear.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's no drainage from inside the building to out of it,
No,
right?
I don't
Okay.
have nothing coming in, so there's really nothing to drain out.
Also on the site walk, there was a mention of he's going to add a lean-to
Yeah.
to cover his holding tanks for waste oil or fuels, as well as the few tires that he will have will be undercover so that there won't be any DEP issue there.
Yeah.
Stan, can you just go through what, obviously we can do a conditional use permit so that you can do a business like this, and from the town perspective, but there is a number of state and other, permits that he has to go through that process beyond just your inspection as well, right?
Not in regards to this, because he's not recycling, he's only a service auto repair. So unless he runs into a violation, then DEP will not get involved with it.
But to your point about storing stuff with the lean-to and that kind of thing, that's part of the inspection process that's beyond your process, or that's your process?
That would be mine and the chief's or the deputy chief's responsibilities when we do an on-site inspection, or if we get a complaint, then we would have to go on-site and
Right.
do an inspection. And there will be at least one annual inspection, if not two. There's always the Life Safety 101 inspection that the fire department and myself do, which will be annual. And then there will be another one to follow to make sure that the conditions are continually met and there's been no significant changes.
Thanks.
I don't have any other questions. Do either of you? Any other questions from the public? Okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we'll close out the first public hearing for Haney Auto LLC, and we'll move on to the second public hearing for CIS Salvage, map 6, lots 1A, 1A, 2, and Route 5. John, you want to? Do you want to let them know we're going to deliberate in a little bit? Yeah.
Good evening, Sean Gerard, CIE Salvage.
Let me just switch my paperwork out. You want to give us a... You want to give everybody a quick rundown of your business?
Our auto recycling salvage company. We do used cars. The business has been there since 1970. We're the third owner. And we recycle auto parts, batteries, junk, copper, brass, any of that stuff. And we employ approximately 26 people.
All right. All right. Any questions from the board or the public? Merrill?
Recognizing that 2 of the 3 of you are new to the renewal of this particular permit, I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to review a few things that came at the last permit granting, both by the planning board and the select board, and I'd be glad to provide documentation if necessary. The select board, and this was on 3/20 of 23, indicated that any and all testing that is done, that was being water sampling, the results are to be sent to the CEO as soon as possible, and within 24 months of the issue of the permit, an 8-foot high fence is installed from the transfer station section by the end of the scales north to the end of the salvage yard. Now the requirements from the planning board, which was in January of 23. And some of these are simply a restatement of what you chose as terms that were in his application, as well as if you added something. So I want to stress the 180 days to drain fluids from all vehicles. The applicant is to maintain good housekeeping practices and shall maintain fire lanes. On condition 9, you added to the answer that the used car area will not exceed 2 rows of saleable used cars. Conditional use 10, he'll maintain housekeeping for parking in front of the office area. Conditional use 12, condition met with answers that he had provided and the fact that the concrete pad for metal will be replaced this summer. That would be the last pad that we saw where vehicles were processed today on the sidewalk. Conditional use 16, Aaron wanted to make sure that the used car area will remain open as long as cars are kept in that area and that it will be left to Stan's discretion. It is his call concerning fencing and plantings, which is already in the conditions anyways. The applicant had further answers that I just thought were relevant, that 1, he's maintaining 15-foot tall and deep plantings, that he's doing quarterly water testing and reporting it to the main DEP, and on conditional use 12, that he's doing quarterly water testing completed by Katahdin, and monthly and quarterly inspections are reported to the main DEP. So these were all particular requirements in 2023. I'm going to provide this one copy to you when I finish reading through it, so I apologize that I didn't make copies earlier, but this is an addendum to the solid waste license that the state of Maine provided to CIA. It's signed by the commissioner at the time, Melanie Loizin, on June 16th, 2021. In regards to the CCD, transfer area slab, I believe that's construction demolition debris. Is that what CCD stands for? So you saw that in the earlier part of the walk after the trailer full of tires. And they just reminded him that everything needed to be kept behind the cement blocks, which it was today, to meet the setback requirements. They had concerns because at least in their inspection they had not seen that to be true. New outdoor metal storage and processing pad. And I'm going to be a little wordy here. The original application proposed 3 110-foot by 75-foot concrete pads for the storage and processing of metal. These were approved in the applicant's original dual license, but only one was constructed, and the applicant states he does not intend to construct the other 2. The existing pad is now heavily damaged and in need of replacement. Now, again, this is 2021. The applicant proposes to demolish this pad and replace it with a new one of the same size, but to add a oil-water separator to the northwest corner to help control fluids and minimize risk of pollutants entering the down-gradient stormwater system. The department finds that replacement of the damaged pad and the addition of a oil-water separator is acceptable and may, if properly maintained and operated, decrease the risk of future oil discharge to ground or surface water. However, the department has observed significant oil spills, oily runoff, and a heavy accumulation of oily soil on and around this pad, and therefore finds that soil monitoring for petroleum must occur during demolition and earthwork for the new pad. Soil monitoring must be performed by the qualified third-party inspector approved by the department. Tire storage. The department finds, and they cite a specific rule, 06096 CMR CH 409, whatever, and states that outside tire storage areas at processing facilities may not be located closer than 300 feet to a sand and gravel aquifer. GIS data for the applicant's property, GIS data for the site indicates that much of the northeastern portion of the applicant's property overlies a sand and gravel aquifer. Given the location of the applicant's property relative to public roads, protected natural resources, and nearby residences, there is no location on the licensed portion of the property that meets the setback requirement for outside tire storage. The department, therefore, finds that the applicant may store up to 2,500 tires at his facility only if all tires are either stored inside a building or under a permanent cover and on an impervious surface such as concrete or asphalt base pad. The department further finds that the storage area must be walled or otherwise clearly delineated so that it may not contain more than 2,500 tires at any time. And the applicant must be able to document that tires have not been stored for more than 2 years before proper disposal. The department also finds that the applicant may continue to store up to 1,000 tires on the ground until tire storage area is completed. This section was labeled scheduled. The applicant plans to begin the proposed facility modifications immediately upon approval by the department. The department finds that the applicant has not provided a construction schedule showing the order of construction or when the construction will be completed. The department therefore finds the applicant must submit for department review and approval a schedule providing the timeline for construction of different areas described in this license, and the expected date construction of all areas will be completed. No area approved for modification or construction by this license may be used while it is undergoing modification or construction. Use may begin once documentation that it was constructed as licensed has been submitted to the department for its review and approval. Again, this was an addendum to his license in 2021. To remind, Mr. Wright, it would be a reminder to you, but for the other members, you would not have heard this. At the last review, Maine DEP had come down to see the site very shortly before that last review. The inspection was January 4th, 2023, and this was Maine DEP's finding. The CCD transfer area, CCD storage pad requires a 100-foot setback to keep the loads behind the line of the concrete. They are finding a small amount of spillover beyond that. Stormwater control structures, riprap repairs were needed, and they gave specifics. Today, I think we saw that, at least on the major third pond, the larger pond, that there was a fair amount of area where the riprap wasn't there, and more soils were being driven down towards that particular pond. But I'm not an erosion expert, so don't take my word for it. Metal processing area, 2023 again. Metal pads contained a significant amount of metal, soil, and fair number of tires. Although there was discussion recently about installation of a concrete apron on the east side of the pad before the end of 2022, no work has been done yet. It is my understanding that the plan is to install the apron and replace the pad in 2023. And it seems likely that this area will be substantially improved when this is done. The apron should decrease tracking of yard soil onto the storage pad. That and the installation of a new concrete storage pad should help staff more quickly identify and address any spills before they become a significant problem. Please make every effort to perform this work as soon as weather conditions are appropriate. That same report said petroleum storage must be in appropriate containers that are closed at all times when fluid is not being added or removed, and must have appropriate secondary containment. Scrap tire storage on site may exceed the currently allowed default of 1,000 tires, and there are several refrigerant-containing appliances which were not permitted. They gave recommendations for. So 2 years after this amended license, and still today, so 4 years after that license, you don't have a metal processing pad that's been replaced, where in 2023, the Maine DEP talked about how heavily soiled that area was. The amount of breakage of that particular pad, I'm sure most of you would agree, probably prevents anything from really making it to the oil water separator that is apparently installed at that area. So I have a couple of questions. One that I'm hopeful the planning board can help me with is, I saw the bigger plan for the site, and should the site map delineate the line for soil, gravel, aquifer? And I thought it was also a requirement for this type of operation to have a 100-year flood plan line also determined. Neither one of those I can see on there. And I also question, because we walked around today, and everything that we first saw after the CCD area and that, I believe a lot of that area is in the sand gravel aquifer. And yet there's a lot of vehicles parked there, which I thought was not a permitted usage of that area. The number of tires, well, it depends whether you look at whether the trailer and its tires, which I'm hopeful that those are leaving very soon, that he's been exceeding that tire limit on more than one occasion. We don't certainly see housekeeping and fire lane issues, because I'm going to ask you whether all the conditions were met that is in the fire captain's report to have been satisfied when he did his recent one on October 28th. Well, actually, that's listed as 2022. That was put in and that was submitted as the updated fire report, which does for a 2025 application. Maybe that's not an up-to-date fire inspection report, Stan? I'm just looking at the application, I'm sorry. The used car area, I ask, can I ask, Stan, how many times have you been told there was violations or seen violations in the used car area in the last 2 years?
There has been no violations, but when he has encroached on some of the Everybody hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yep.
So in the used car area, he's always maintained at least a minimum of 1 row, sometimes 2 rows. There are some vehicles in that area that are being repaired or serviced or being moved within a few weeks. But he has maintained the area. Whenever I drive up there, which is quite frequently, and I see anything concerning, I do mention it to him, and he does clean it up.
You could not give an estimate of how many times that would have been in the last 2 years.
It's periodically, once in a while. It's not often.
Okay. And tires, have you ever made any mention to him about tires being in excess?
Yep, the tires, DEP, Eric Hamlin, and a few other DEP people, and I have had numerous discussions about that. Sean is allowed to keep up to 2,500 tires. Preferably, they would like them undercover. Not all of them are. And he does, on occasion, accumulate more tires, and I recently had a conversation with Eric Hamlin regarding this, because if Sean don't take some of these tires, and it may increase it until he gets rid of them, which is within 30 to 60 days, then they're going to end up on the side of the road. And that's been problematic, because if people can't get rid of them, they don't want to go to the transfer station, they don't want to do this, or the transportation is closed when they want to get rid of them, they end up on the side of the road. So Eric has said, as long as it's a temporary thing, and he's relying on my monitoring, which I do, and Sean knows that I'm a pain in the backside, but he does get rid of them, and they do go up and down. Sometimes there's probably a little more, but I think he's made a huge progress in getting rid of it. The landfill or transfer station area, that pile was 3 times higher than it was 2 years ago. So again, Sean has made an enormous amount of effort and progress maintaining the housekeeping and correcting the violations. The one thing that he hasn't completed yet is the preparation pad. That is in the plans, and I have repeatedly told Sean that is going to be a question that will be raised at the public hearing. So the fire lanes and the fire chief's inspection, that was again continued from a previous one, which was 2023 or 2022, and it says the same thing. The fire lanes have now been maintained. They were not before. We walked those tonight. You can see that there is a clear path all the way around. There is access to each level, and that was the more important thing, because if there is an incident there, the first responders need to be able to adequately and safely maneuver around the building to control the fire. The retention ponds that was brought up, those are inspected by Stillwater every 30 days. So those, if there's a problem, Stillwater will contact me. Sean's been good too. There was an issue a couple years ago where there was some damage done to one of the holding ponds, and the riprap had to be replaced. I do have a question. The first one is lower on water. I haven't addressed that with Sean yet, but they all have a rubber liner, I believe, and then the riprap is on top of them. I'm sorry?
It's a clay base.
It's a clay base. So it doesn't allow the water to get evaporated into the ground and dispensed. It's to collect the sediment and push it into those areas that were pointed out to you, the concrete areas. And then he has several points that he has to test the water. He showed you several of those tonight. So there is, and as far as the water testing goes, DEP has asked for quarterly. The town has asked for quarterly, but there are times when there's a drought, you cannot get a water test adequately. If it's frozen, you cannot get a water test. So, and that has the case. Last fall, we were in a drought. This winter, it's been frozen. It has just thawed. And he does have it scheduled for April to do the water test.
So to be a little more specific, there are 2 water tests, summer and fall, of 2024 that were not done, not just fall, but 2. So it's been actually more than 1 year since the last time a water test was performed. So what?
He did do 2 tests last year. He did not do the fall and the beginning of the winter test. The tests are done. The other thing DEP has done, and I forward it to other people, I believe Brian's one of them that is more adequate at reading the test results. But the test results, since this started in 2021, DEP has said there has not been any significant changes. The results have been basically the same. So they are not concerned if he does have to miss 1 or 2 as long as they're informed. And Sean has informed me, and I have informed at that time the planning board and the select board that he was unable to do the test for whatever the reason was, whether it was a drought or the water is frozen. But DEP has kept records of it. We can provide those to you if you want. I do have them in my office. Since it began, and the test results have not changed. That shows any signs of any increase of contamination or any major contamination at all.
So I apologize if I'm inaccurate, because I don't like to be inaccurate. I talked to Eric Hamlin of the Maine DEP only a couple weeks ago, and he said that the last 2 tests were not done, and they, I think, only expect 3 tests because winter is not a testable time. So I'm only going by what Eric Hamlin had told me. And so if I am incorrect, I'll find out soon enough from copies of those. I wonder, because the last SWEP plan was 2022, whether you require an update. But actually, you know what I care about? All I want is compliance. You know what I want? Is to protect our community. I think I've been up here so many times that you are probably nauseous from having listened to me about what I asked for. And I'm not a direct neighbor to this, but I'm a neighbor to another property that could have the same sorts of problems, and yet I care about those neighbors that are nearby. I care what they smell for odors, what they experience for everything that's there. And groundwater and surface water is incredibly important to be protecting. And you were on that property today doing a walk. You saw what the condition of the roads were. I know that it's frost is leaving the ground, etc. But I know roads that used to look like that people have done work on with sands, etc. And they look nothing like that nowadays when the frost goes out. So I don't know that there can't be improvement. I care very much that things are not stored in the sand and gravel aquifer. I care that the water testing is done. So if this is approved, what I would like to see is a black and white, can't be done any other way. Delaying for 4 years getting this concrete pad done, to me, is a horrid attack on the town. Who's protecting us if it's not you? It should be also the select board. It should be also Maine DEP. There's no doubt, but everyone, Maine DEP hasn't been there in over 2 years because they've been short-staffed. Is that good? No, I don't believe so. So I'm not saying it's any one person's fault, but if no one puts any teeth to the future, then it's going to continue just the way it is, because there's no strong motivation to do it. And I know that expense has been one issue that has been mentioned in the past, but everyone who runs a business knows that there's just some inherent costs to running that business. And I think recycling is very important. So it's not that I think that this is not a vital function. And it's not me saying I don't want it in this community. It's me saying I want it not to be hurting our community. Thank you.
John?
Sean Gerard again. We work with DEP on a monthly or every other month basis. My engineers work with DEP. Stan has pictures in his phone. I have pictures in mine that I sent to Stan for the water testing. We haven't tested since August of last year, I believe is the last one, because there's no water flowing. You know, our well at the shop went dry. We have two wells because one went dry and we had another one done. Then there's no water. You can't, if you don't have the water, you don't get the testing. The brook even dried up. It's not that we're not doing our testing, we're doing our testing. The tires fluctuate in between, the demo fluctuates in between. The pad that's there, we proposed that pad. The reason I got in trouble with the DEP is because we did not put the detention pond in, and that was part of to take the demolition. So that's what the detention pond kicked us into that dual permit to be able to take demo and meadow as well. So that's why we didn't do that. Most yards don't even have pads down for the material. We recommended that. We are working with that. We have 3/4 of a pad under there right now. Some of it is broke up. We need to do some testing, and then we'll take out the dirty dirt as we usually do, and then that gets recycled and sent off to the proper facilities, and then replace the concrete pad. We have worked with Eric at the DEP. I don't know what else there is. I mean, if I was in violation of everything, the DEP would be there on my door. Like I said, a couple of years ago, I did have the violation that we didn't put the detention ponds in. We spent around 150, 200 grand to put the detention ponds in. That water gets tested. Still water comes out once a month. If Eric Hamlin doesn't come see me, then I don't control what the DEP does. But, you know, obviously we're in mud season and things are pretty rough. So.
In summary, and I'm glad that everybody on the planning board was able to attend the site walk. Some of you have seen it before. Some of you have seen the pictures, you've watched the videos. I've been here since the fall of 2021, and one of the biggest problems with some of the enforcement issues is a lot of people were not told what the regulations were and they weren't being enforced. So for 20 years, a lot of people have been operating in violation and not really known it. Sean, and since 2021, and several others have come into compliance. Sean is 99.5% in compliance at CIA Salvage Route 5. He is 99.9% compliant on 41 Range E Road, which is a separate issue. But he has made progress. The grounds, as you've seen tonight, are very clean. They're very walkable. You can see everything. In site walks 2 years ago, there was piles everywhere. The fire lanes weren't passable. So it is the thing when we do a 2-year renewal, which shouldn't really be necessary, but it is the ordinance, is if there's any change, then it goes back to the planning board. In this case, the only change really has been, there's been more improvement, and we're going to continue that. The area where the transfer station is, and there is a block wall or a retention marker that keeps his 100-foot setback from the road. And that is one of the violations that was caught in 2022 by DEP. Some of that transfer area came off the pad because the pile was so high. And there was some extenuating situations or circumstances at the time that he had a very, very large influx of debris. So that was corrected. Everything stays behind or beyond that 100-foot marker. So that hasn't been an issue. And again, keep in mind when you make your final decision that at this point there has been a huge improvement. I would like CIA Salvage to make some sort of commitment as to when the proposed pad that they propose to do, he'll be able to complete that. And we continue to, the fire chief and I do continue to monitor that. If there is any violations or any concerns, whether it comes from DEP, Sean, or any other resident in this town, you guys have seen, if you've been on the board, that I will email both the planning board and the select board. I CC DEP and Sean, so everybody has the same information at the same time. And I know Merrill FOAA'd 2 years worth of my emails concerning Route 5, so he has those communications, and I even went a little further because some of the emails either prior to or after that deadline would explain the content of the email and what the results were. So we can't add any conditions to the existing because there hasn't been any change in what he's doing at the facility. So there is, I know there was a request, maybe we can add a little more. We really legally shouldn't be doing that because what he's doing there or the purpose of his work hasn't changed significantly that it requires any other changes in conditions. And again, that would be where I come into play. I work very closely with DEP. Eric has been very difficult to get a hold of, but there is a new person. But they are in the loop, and some of this, as a town or as me, and I say we because we all work together, we have to work with DEP to do it because some of those are DEP stipulations. I can only enforce, and the town can only enforce to a certain point. But when DEP says they're not concerned, then we would have to get our attorneys involved, another DEP professional, and we did this with one of his other properties, and Anna came back and said, well, that isn't what I meant. So that's how quickly people can change their stance. If there is anything concerning, if anybody sees anything concerning, and his neighbors do, tell me when there's water running off the back of his truck and he's going up the road. So we're very much aware of what happens at Route 5, but I want you to take in consideration the progress that has been made, and it will continue to be made. Sean is aware, his attorney has already told Sean again that if there is a violation, once the boards, both planning board and select board, are notified, one of the duties they are is to have a public hearing to decide discipline up to or including revoking the licenses. So he's got too much money and too much time invested. Now, does Merrill bring up a lot of value points? Yes, he does. And there was 20 years worth of issues that were never caught because they were never enforced. It could be a training problem. It could have been an enforcement problem. But the other party that is involved is the Department of Motor Vehicles. So they're the other ones and the original ones that initiated DEP's requirement of the retention ponds because there was residual oils on the ground. So there is a lot more at play. That's what I try to play so that you guys aren't tied down with all of the minor facts, but if you have any questions on that, I think, but again, I do agree with Merrill with a lot of things environmentally, and that is our concern too.
All right, thanks.
I just have one thing, Stan. So just to be clear, I think you made it pretty clear, but the reason we do these every 2 years is so that there doesn't a period of a decade go by where someone's, piling up 10,000 tires a month and no one notices. And so the idea is to evaluate whether anything has changed significantly. And you said the only thing that's changed is that it's improved.
Exactly. In normal cases, in a good enforcement officer and good, employed or self-sustained DEP personnel, and everybody is shorthanded, would catch those things. I periodically, and a lot of times unannounced, will go in to say, "Hi, Sean, I'm here." So I do that. That's what we're supposed to do. It isn't to be the pain in the butt, but it is to make sure that we're not overlooking something and I'm not missing something.
As it relates to the pad that we were discussing, and I'm trying to figure out which one that specifically is, and my assumption is the one that where you take the sort of, it was the dry piece and then there's the wet piece on the opposite side of it, and is that pad all of that area in between there?
You want to answer that?
The pad that we have to work on is where you came down where the trucks were after the demo. I can point it out on the map.
So it's on the right-hand side that we were walking by it then, where you have all of the material there?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's,
Yeah.
and a lot of the stuff that's in this here that we do with the DEP is we've pushed forward to have the right, the right tanks, the right holding tanks, the right equipment to maintain everything that we do so that, the oil and everything is minimized to whatever's going to be there. If there's something that needs to be cleaned up, we clean it up. That's our job. We're working with the DEP and Eric Hamlin to come up with a timeline on the pad. The markets weren't very good for the last couple of years, so that's why we haven't moved forward with that. But we do have, like I said, there's quarters of a pad there now, and we're going to work with DEP to come up with a timeline on that.
Stan, can I ask you another question then to that point? Thanks, Sean. So to that point, you said we can't necessarily add any more conditions to the conditional use permit as we're talking about this pad or whatnot, but DEP would be the ones in their inspection to say, now this has to be done or you can't move forward, correct?
Correct. And DEP is well aware that the pad isn't done.
Yeah.
So isn't the select board, and everybody wants it done. But to add, unless something has changed,
right,
the town is not in a position to add or change a condition. So, and if something does change, that is why, or there's a violation or a concern, that is why it's important for both boards to be notified as promptly as possible. The other thing that Merrill did bring up is the sand and gravel aquifer table. At the time, DEP was aware of the aquifer and sand and gravel tables. They were not on the original plans, so they're not added because that's another change. But it goes up to basically from where the transfer station is to the holding ponds is the main part of the sand and gravel. So there is not any vehicles there, and what the law says, they can't be there any more than 6 months with oil in them, so, or hazard materials. So that area has been closely watched. You can see the aluminum stockpiles there. The transfer station is right about at the butt end of it, but he's got a bunch of other things, but they're not vehicles with hazardous materials. So that is the most sensitive area on that property, is where those retention ponds are.
In your opinion, do you think that should be marked on the map?
But sand and gravel aquifer, yeah. I do have that. I can provide that to you. Okay. But to add it to the application when it wasn't part of the original, it may constitute a change. But we do have that. And it's always available. I can even email it to you. It's part of the GIS system. I think you guys have it. I sent you the link.
Yeah.
Ashley, I don't know if you have it, but I will send the planning board that whole link. You can type in an address and on the right-hand side where it says layers, it will give you different options, and what you want to look for is the sand and gravel aquifer tables. There's another one that we'll be bringing up, just to change the subject very quickly, the wellhead protection that Aaron has been working on. I'm proofing the draft now, but in the GIS, it shows the wellheads, it shows your protected zones, which there are two. There's the 1,000-foot and 2,500-foot. So, and Aaron believed there was 3, there's 5 of those in town. There's 2 major recharge areas that are the most protected areas that we need to watch. And those are not near CIA Salvage. One is near Quarry Road, and the other one is down by Steve McLean's museum. So those are the areas that are the most sensitive to environmental contaminants. I know Merrill wants to talk, so.
Yeah, and I just, if the board is fine, since we can ask Stan questions after the public's done, if we want to let Merrill ask his final questions, close the public hearing, that way we can finish their permit, get them out of here since they've been waiting patiently, then we can finish up with Sean. So, Merrill.
So a little of my confusion is the way Stan worded that pretty much sounds like you have no choices but to give this conditional use permit. However, when I read those conditions, things like water protection is part of that condition. And if there's a belief that that is not being protected, I'm not sure how Stan can say, oh no, you have to give it anyway. So I'm just don't know the answer to this. And I'm not arguing Stan's accuracy. There are improvements in some things. I'm not saying there's been none. Part of what I care about is water, and that's sounds like a black and white thing. And I said,
Yep, thanks. All right, if there's no other comments from the public, Sean, we'll let you talk in a little bit because we can ask you questions. Okay. We'll let you respond in a minute. If the board is good closing the public here, we'll proceed to the meeting. All right. All right, we'll move on to the planning board meeting. I'll table a couple items, one of which would be the minutes and then electing some officers. I'd like to move right to deliberating on the Haney LLC, Auto LLC permit, if the rest of the board is fine with that. All right. All right. All right, if one of you wants to head back up to the stand, what we'll do is we're going to go through, we have 16 questions here. We kind of already ran through them, but we're going to kind of run through them in a more official way now, and we'll vote on each one. We may attach a condition to it, and then we'll vote kind of at the end to approve your conditional use permit. All right. This is just the ones on page 84, right? Or I guess they have it in their application too.
Yeah, that's 16 in the application, right?
Yep. All right. Question 1. Will meet the definition and specific requirements set forth in this ordinance for specific use. All right. So you're proposing a motor vehicle and service facility. Yep.
You all have the answers to the questions.
Yes. What is that? Is that residence, farm, and forest?
Yeah. you need a motion on this?
No, I'm looking it up in this table here, like we usually do. Making sure that it meets the, criteria for conditional use. I'm sure it does, otherwise they wouldn't be here, but. Yep. Motor vehicle repair and service facility, residential farm and forest. So it does listed here as conditional use. So I'll entertain a motion that they meet condition 1.
I'll second that.
All right. All in favor? All right. Question number 2. Will not have significant detrimental effect on the use and peaceful enjoyment adjacent or nearby property as a result of noise, vibrations, fumes, odor, dust, light, glare, or other causes. Any discussion from the board?
As long as work is done within those hours, I think that's perfectly fine.
Yep.
All right. Is there a motion to approve condition 2?
I make a motion that we approve condition 2, that they will not have significant detrimental effects on the use and peaceful enjoyment of adjacent or nearby properties because of noise, vibrations, fumes, odor, dust, glare, or other causes.
All right, I'll second that. All in favor? All right, number 3, will not have significant adverse effect on adjacent or nearby property values. Any discussion? I think the build outside of the building looked very nice. I know you have some more work to do on the inside, but it kind of looked like a barn, a nice, newer barn kind of driving up to it. I actually missed it on my way up there, so that's a good sign.
The property itself, like the entire property, is very nicely.
Yep.
Thank you.
My only question in this one is that you had said there's a stone wall and established oak trees, but then you were talking with the neighbor about
Yeah.
possibly cutting some of those trees
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
I think, as long as the neighbor understands what you're doing and it's their
Well, the
idea
neighbor
to
will be
cut the
doing
trees
it, actually.
down,
He's got
then
the-
that's their own prerogative.
Yeah.
But just wanted to note that in the section it does note that, but it was a little different at the sidewalk.
Fair enough.
But I think it's fine.
All right. All right. Is there a motion to approve condition 3?
Yep, I'll make a motion that they meet condition 3 and it will not have significant adverse effects on adjacent or nearby property values.
All right, I'll second. All in favor? Number 4, will not result in significant hazards to pedestrian or vehicle traffic or significant traffic congestion. All right. Your answer here is Owl's Hill is not heavily traveled road. The amount of traffic is expected for a small business will not cause a hazard to pedestrian or local traffic. Any discussion from the board?
No, but I do have a question in regards to, so like, will tow trucks be dropping off cars in the middle of the night and such, like after hours?
I really can't say. Possibly.
Just wondering for like, because you said they come
Yeah,
towards the end of the road and back up, so
I mean,
I'm just
even
wondering
if
about
they do,
sound.
we have an easy easement for them to get in and out, so it's a matter of minutes and they're gone anyway.
Yeah, it was a pretty quiet street. I didn't see anything that would appear to have any increased traffic from the amount of cars you were thinking of having in there. It didn't seem like that would have any significant hazard to pedestrian, traffic.
There's just not enough traffic on that road to be a problem, either Stonehill or Owl's Hill.
Owl's Hill.
I just meant that
Oh,
Stonehill's the adjacent road to that. I was saying there's not that much traffic on either of those roads.
Gotcha. All right. Is there a motion to approve condition 4?
I motion motion to approve condition 4 that it will not result in significant hazards to pedestrians or vehicular traffic or significant traffic congestion.
I'll second. All those in favor? Motion approved. All right. Number 5, will not result in significant fire danger. All right. Your answer was fire extinguisher will be placed near each bay. Owner and operator has fire prevention training. You do have your letter from the fire chief in your application. And as Ashley mentioned, there was a couple things that I believe were in your permit that were needed to be corrected, but I think we saw on the site walk that they were completed. That was the carbon monoxide detector, and then what was the other one?
A fire extinguisher and an exit sign.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Any
The exit sign can just be a poster. It doesn't have to be like a lit sign. Sorry.
The exit signs only need to be glow in the dark or fluorescent. They don't have to be lit in this case because it's not a living space. So that we went over when the fire chief was there, so they did add those over the door.
Thank you.
All right.
I make a motion that criteria for number 5 is met, that it's not result in a significant fire danger at the facility.
All right. I'll second. All those in favor? Number 6, will not result in significant flood hazards or flood damage, drainage problems, ground or surface water contamination, or soil erosion. Your answer here is there's no running water in the building to cause flood hazards or soil erosion. There's adequate drainage to the exterior of the building. I think my only question here is the drainage upgrades you were talking about. Do you know what the timeline you were thinking of that, and what were you planning, and what prompted you to plan those upgrades for the outside of the building?
Mostly for the water runoff going to the building.
Yeah.
But if the rock wall side had some drainage going down, it would kind of serve dual purpose.
Okay.
But the timeline, it'll have to be when the ground stiffens up so we can get our tractors in there and take care of it.
Right. But I'm pretty sure this question is saying that the building itself or the activity is not going to cause a flood.
And I was going to say, I don't see these as causing any more erosion that you've already been dealing with up there anyway, so,
right.
With the hillside.
Right.
So I'd make a motion that number 6, the criteria for number 6 is met, that it is not going to result in any significant flood hazards or damage, drainage problems, or ground or surface water contamination or soil erosion.
I'll second. All in favor? Number 7, will not create a safety hazard because of inadequate access to the site or to buildings on the site for emergency vehicles. Your answer to this was there's access for emergency vehicles to all sides of the building that will be maintained by the owner and operator. I think we talked about it in the public meeting, plenty of space around the building. I think you're kind of at that 10-foot setback or close to it on the rock wall side, so you're not really planning to put anything on that side, right?
I think it's 15 to 18 feet.
Okay.
Well, that's where the lean-to is going to go, right?
Right, but so if it's 15, so
Well, I'll talk with Stan as
Yeah.
far as the lean-to and what would be the best place to put it before, we put anything in place anyway.
Okay. Either way, I think even with that, I think there'd be enough access around the building.
Yeah.
Other sides have plenty of room. The only thing, no, I think I'm good there. I don't have any other concerns for number 7. Does the rest of the board?
Nope. Motion to say that number 7 meets, will not create a safety hazard because of inadequate access to the site or buildings on the site for emergency vehicles.
Second.
All in favor? Number 8, has proposed exterior lighting that will not create hazards to motorists traveling on adjacent public streets, is adequate to the safety of occupants or users to the site, and will not damage the value and diminish the usability of adjacent properties. Your answer is the building has adequate lighting to the main door that does not face neighboring properties. The front of the building faces Owls Hill Road, will have a spotlight pointed towards the ground. As mentioned before, the grade of the building is much lower than the street, ensuring that lights on the building will not pose a hazard to traveling motorists. And my only question is for Stan, because it says proposed plan, he doesn't have to have that lighting in place before we approve it, correct? Okay.
Yeah, it sounded like you guys were, the biggest concern was for lights for going into your eyes and the house next door, so it didn't seem like it would be that big of a deal. I guess when you're coming off of Stone Hill Road, you can't see that building down below or anything like that when you're coming down there.
As you've seen, you
Yeah.
tend to drive right past it.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll motion that number 8 has proposed exterior lighting will not create hazards to motorists traveling on adjacent public streets, is adequate to the safety of occupants or users of the site, and will not damage the value or diminish the usability of adjacent properties.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Number 9, makes provisions for buffers and on-site landscaping, which will provide adequate protection to neighboring properties from detrimental effects or detrimental features of the development. I think we kind of already talked about the drainage. You know, most of that property, if anything, is going to drain into your garage at the moment, not your neighbor.
The neighbor asked to divert it into his pond.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I would make a motion that number 9 has been met, that they've made provisions for whatever buffers needed and landscaping so that it has adequate protection to neighboring properties. It didn't seem like there was any detrimental features of the development.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Number 10, makes provisions for vehicular loading and unloading and parking for vehicular and pedestrian circulation on the site and onto adjacent public streets, which neither creates hazards to safety nor imposes significant burdens on public facilities. I think that the only thing here is, you know, as we kind of talked about, is your driveway is a little steep. I mean, there's obviously enough room for the vehicles there.
Yeah.
Did we want to set a limit on the vehicles? I know you had said 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Did we feel like we needed to set a limit on the permit itself, or?
I have a question for Stan in that. Is there a precedent for that in terms of how many vehicles, what's expected with a normal operation for a business like this?
Well, in the past, I've noticed that the planning board has restricted 5 or 6 vehicles, but I think the most important thing is that it's 5 or 6 vehicles. If they're registered, it's fine, but if they're not registered, that constitutes the junkyard, and that would not be acceptable.
Is it up to us to stipulate that in this conditional use permit, or is that part of the zoning ordinance regardless?
Well, the zoning ordinance covers the junkyard. The curb appeal or the limiting of accumulating cars would be a condition the planning board would set. We do have a service garage in Limerick that has plates on the majority of the vehicles, but they are not registered. It's just being kind of put through a loophole, if you will. So that's been an ongoing thing that I have been working on, but we do have that situation. There was one on Central Avenue headed out of town. They were limited to 5 vehicles, and then I discovered that he's storing them down by the brook, so there's more there. So again, if it's an area that's sensitive or you think is going to attract negativity, then that's when you would put the condition on it. But the applicants already said they didn't see that they would have more than 5 or 6 there at any given time, so it's something the board needs
There's
to.
no shortage of violations on the ordinance of unregistered vehicles in Limerick.
Well, and again, that's an ongoing thing. Most of the people are complying. I know of the one that has the 60 or 70 cars with plates on them is starting to take care of the issue because we did have a very lengthy talk. And I said, either you go back to the planning board and get your sales car conditional use, or you get rid of the cars. But that's, I don't see any issue with these applicants with restricting vehicles at this point.
Yeah, I mean, my concern is not necessarily your use of stockpiling them. It's more making sure that that space and the slope of it, so the cars don't pile up, so that like unloading a car, a tow truck would have to be out in the middle of the road. I know it's a quiet street, but
Correct.
The question here, we do have to make sure that we're not putting any burden, although it does say significant burden. But no, I mean, I'd put that to the board. What do the two of you think?
But as far as towings go, like I showed you where you back in
Yep.
and drop a car, that'll be a designated drop-off spot. Nobody's gonna park there.
Right.
Same with, we discussed parking in front of the bay doors, which become a huge issue.
Right.
So it's not even really a
Yeah.
big thing. So.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously I'll police that myself, but just because it makes it easier for me to get a car into the shop from there as opposed to down a little lower.
Yeah, I mean, I'd feel comfortable, and I don't know that you'd want to limit yourself necessarily. I don't know that helps you, or, in your business, you can't have that many cars there regardless, because you wouldn't be able to get new vehicles in to work on them. You just got to keep them to your
Right, but
point.
it's just me.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
it's
I can
just
only
you, so
work
it's-
on so many cars at a time, so
Yeah, and I think the zoning ordinance that exists about unregistered vehicles, that's part of just the normal zoning ordinance, so I don't think that's that big of an issue. And to your point, you said you weren't going to be selling vehicles, weren't necessarily like that, so I don't know that we necessarily need to restrict the number of those
I don't think
vehicles.
they in particular need a limit, but I also want to make sure that we're being consistent across the board. So if we have limited one
It's all-
property for
if there's been a precedent
without like a
for it, yeah.
reason,
If
I
we
want to
said
make sure we
5
are being consistent and fair to everyone who's applying for the same
If the
permit.
last vehicle, and that wasn't a condition within the one that we did before on Stone Hill Road. I don't remember that was part of that conditional use permit where we gave a number. It was, but I don't know the one that you referenced before where that number was 5? What was that was on Central Avenue?
The one on Central Avenue was restricted to 5. And there's more there if you look around the corner.
Were they
Restricted to
limited to
5
five
vehicles.
after? Sorry,
No,
but we're
I'm
asking
sorry.
the same thing. Go
No,
ahead.
was it you could have 5 vehicles that you're working on at any given moment or any given time?
5 vehicles that are being serviced. So, and in this case, if you remember, the location of the Hanleys, they don't have really enough room to store more than 5 cars in front of the building. So it's a new issue, but I did want you to be aware
Yeah.
those are options that you do have.
Yeah, I wouldn't feel comfortable restricting it if we haven't done that in the past with any consistency. I don't think it's appropriate.
Okay.
I agree.
All righty.
So I think we're back to, is it number 10?
Yes.
I make a motion that they've met the criteria for number 10. They've made provisions for vehicle loading and unloading and parking, and for vehicular and pedestrian circulation on the site and onto the adjacent public streets, which will not create hazards to safety nor impose significant burdens on any of the public facilities nearby.
I will say just be very aware of that.
Yes.
As you're starting.
won't let it become a problem.
Yeah.
I'll second. All in favor? All right, 11, makes adequate provisions for disposal of wastewater or solid waste and for the prevention of ground or surface water contamination. Lost your answers here, sorry about that. Here we go. 11, wastewater and other products will be labeled and held in appropriate disposal containers. Waste products will be removed from the facility and disposed of accordingly to Maine laws and regulations. We did talk about it when we were there at the site walk. And I believe we discussed it here tonight, how you're going to get a temporary container, store it with a lean-to, covered outside.
Correct.
We discussed with Stan how that would meet the standard here, so.
How about spills? Like, how do those get cleaned up without?
You talking like oil spills or
Yeah,
whatever?
like if, it's spilled all over the floor of the garage. Like,
There are soak-up mats and vacuums you can use to collect whatever's spilt.
I didn't recall seeing, do you have like a spill kit, kitty litter, anything? Do you keep that on site?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
It sounded like there was a lot of value in that stuff regardless. It seems like you were giving it away to people and everything else. We're talking specifically about waste oil.
It's a great day and age. You have so many avenues of people coming to collect
Yeah.
that. I know a bunch of waste oil guys that collect it and distribute it for sale.
Yeah, I mean, it's a contained garage. It's not like we're doing this outside. So I would make a motion that the requirements for number 11 have been met, and they're making adequate provision for disposal of wastewater, solid waste, and the prevention of ground or surface water contamination.
Second? All in favor? Number 12, makes adequate provision for control, erosion, or sedimentation. I think we kind of already covered this when we discussed number 6. Did the board have anything else to add? I mean, I'll quickly read their answer. Drainage to the driveway in front of the building installed will be maintained to prevent erosion. Anything else the board feels like they wanted to add or use the applicant?
Stan, was there a road commissioner approval on this for any level of this in terms of what the driveway looks like or the usage off the road?
The road commissioner did visit the site, and he did sign the approval of it, and he found nothing to make note of that he had any concerns.
Okay.
February 4th,
Got it.
road commissioner signed the form.
So that's number 12?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would make a motion that number 12 conditions are met and they've had adequate provision to control erosion and sedimentation.
I'll second. All in favor? 13, make adequate provision to handle storm water runoff and other drainage problems on the site. We've kind of already touched on that, talking about making planned improvements to handle some of the runoff from the driveway. Your property kind of slopes away from your neighbors towards the back, so storm water and runoff wouldn't be running back towards the road. Your answer here is drainage to driveway in front of building installed to handle water runoff, and that's planned.
There is a French drain
Oh,
in
there
the
is?
front of the building
Okay.
around the side.
Great.
Last year, we had a major problem with mud, so we
Yeah.
did some work.
Okay. All right.
I'd make a motion, and we're on 13, right?
Yep.
That conditions for 13 have been met, and they've made adequate provision to handle stormwater runoff and other draining problems on the site with the drainage work that you've done.
I'll second. All in favor?
Excuse me.
Number 14, provides a water supply which will meet the demand of the proposed use. Your answer has no water has been installed or plumbed to the building. We already discussed it earlier and confirmed with Stan that there's no need for water to be supplied to the building. Any discussion?
Nope.
Motion?
I motion that there is no need to provide this one, so I don't know if that counts as meeting it, since they don't need it.
Do we still need to vote on it, right?
Not applicable, yeah.
Oh, okay, so vote that it's not applicable? Okay.
I motion that it's not applicable.
I second it.
All right, all in favor? 15, makes adequate provision for transportation, storage, and disposal of hazardous substances and materials as defined by state law. I think we've kind of touched on this in a couple different answers. Your written answer is all hazardous waste material will be handled and removed regularly by owner operator according to Maine laws. We talked about how you're planning to build the lean-to, covered storage area outside. I think when we were there, we talked about, probably putting that up on pallets to make that easy to load and unload and get that out of there. It seems like you have a pretty good plan for getting what little amount of waste you have off-site.
Do you plan to have a dumpster or about old parts that you remove that are damaged? Like where are those going to be stored also? Before? Yeah. And do you plan to consistently have a schedule, or when you get to a certain pile, and where will that pile be?
I mean, well, you see in our yard, we don't like a lot of stuff laying around, so
Yeah.
it won't hang around long. So it'll probably be, if it not that week, it'll be the following week to do a run, clean up.
I make a motion that they've made adequate provision for transportation, storage, and disposal of hazardous substances and materials defined by state law, given the answer of that they're going to be removing them.
All right, all second, all in favor? All right, last one, 16. Will not have adverse impact on significant scenic vistas or on significant wildlife habitat, which could be avoided by reasonable modification to the plan. Your answer is there's no impact to scenic vistas or wildlife habitat. Deer and other wildlife continue to walk freely around the building and property. I already stated I completely drove past it, as I think a couple of us did.
I'll make a motion that it's not going to have any impact on significant vistas or significant wildlife habitat, given the answers and given where it's at. It's not going to, there's snowmobile trails right behind you, you said.
Yeah.
All those woods are not going anywhere.
All second, all in favor? All right. I think we just got to do one more thing here. All right. Joanne, do we vote to approve now and then read the statement, or do we read the statement and then vote?
Read the statement and then set any special conditions
Okay. And that's part, we make a motion out of this statement?
after that.
After? Okay. All right. All right. So attachment of conditions, violation upon consideration of the standard in Article 7B, the planning board may attach such conditions in addition to those required elsewhere in this ordinance that it is deemed advisable to satisfy those standards. Violation of any of these conditions shall be a violation of the ordinance. Failure to comply with the provisions of this ordinance as interpreted by the code enforcement officer shall be cause for revocation of the conditional use permit. Changes that alter the conditions or provisions of the permit as issued will be a violation. Such conditions may include, but are not limited to, specifications for type of vegetation, increased setbacks in yards, specific sewage disposal and water, supply facilities, landscaping, planting screens, period of operation, operational of controls, professional inspections, maintenance, sureties, deed restrictions, restrictive covenants, location of piers, docks, parking signs, type of constructions, and any conditions necessary to satisfy the standards of Article B. Change in ownership does not constitute a change in use. Is that the correct statement? I think so. Okay. All right. Does the board feel like we need to attach any additional conditions?
I don't.
I think it's just up to Stan to make sure anything that was proposed gets executed.
All right, so I'll look for a motion to approve the conditional use permit with no additional conditions.
Yeah, I'll motion that we approve the Haney Automotive, or Haney Auto LLC conditional use permit with no additional conditions.
All right, all in favor? All in favor? All right, great.
Congratulations.
There we go.
Yep.
We have to sign something.
All right, we need to get the sign something. Yep. Next meeting? Okay. All right, so we'll get those typed up and then we'll sign those next meeting and get that back to you. All right, great. Thanks for waiting.
2nd.
Thanks, you guys. Thanks for being patient.
Thank you. You too.
All right. All right. What's the board thinking? Do we want to run through a couple things? I know, Sean, you wanted to say one more thing on yours. Do we want to continue with his permit now, or have a couple more statements and then deliberate next meeting?
I do have a question. I know you said April 1st is the next water test. And do we know how long does it usually take to get the results back?
So usually there's a 10-day turnaround time, up to 30 days. Final data could be as far as 60 to 90.
Okay, just curious. I'm
Yep.
just looking at our next meeting.
Yep. Yeah, Sean, why don't you go ahead? I know you had something you wanted to say, and I put you on hold, and I'll give you a chance. What was that? All right. Yeah, I'd like to maybe wait till Aaron's back before we deliberate any further and vote on his conditional use permit, if the rest of the board's fine with that.
I guess I do have something to say. I don't think it's fair on my end that we gotta wait for Mr. Carroll to come back. Could be a month, could be 6 months.
So it's not specifically for him itself. I'd like to have the previous findings of fact, which I don't have in front of me. I'd like to take a look at in more detail of what Merrill provided and just have a chance to really consider that. And I'd also like a chance to kind of just consider the public comments that were made tonight. So it's not just that Merrill waiting for Aaron, but he did indicate that he's probably going to be back next meeting. So whether or not he's back next meeting,
No major
we'll
changes.
be deliberate on it.
Everything is in compliance. Dan has said that. We've gone through it. We've done everything. We have to work on our pad, which is something we have between us and the DEP. I don't
Yep.
understand it, it's a renewal.
What's the rest of the board feel like?
April 1st is the next meeting.
The 2nd.
We're gonna continue this on, and then we're gonna get the lawyers involved in it, and we're gonna spend another 10 grand like we did on the other one. And then we're gonna be right back to square one to sign a permit.
I get your frustration. We're discussing it right now as a board. If you want to,
The problem I have is I have 2 conditional use permits in town. Every year, I have to go through the same thing, now I gotta do this one for Route 5, CIA salvage. Next year, I gotta go back with a different group of 5 people for Range Road. And the following year, I come back for CIA salvage. It's frustrating.
yep. I understand that.
I understand. I would just say the following. I think after going out there doing the site walk, the one point that I would make in this case, and again, we just went through all this obviously with Rangy Road and everything else, but with this conditional use permit, to Stan's point, there's no evidence of anything changing significantly. and there's no reports other than DEP asking for the pad to get fixed, but they're not requiring it to the degree that Stan had mentioned. And there's no evidence of any groundwater stuff that we have right now from any of the water tests that have existed or any other. Is DEP testing the brook? Are they looking at anything else around there?
I'm sorry, I can answer that.
Go ahead.
We do the testing. We test the outfalls. We have visual inspections. We test the water that comes out of the pond to the pipe.
Yep.
We test upstream, downstream, and then beyond, when you went up to the second level, where you saw like the old van, there's an outfall there that gets tested, and that's tested above the outfall, below the outfall, and at the outfall.
Yep.
These tests are really expensive and they're extensive as to what we do, somewhere around $3,000 every 3 months. And there hasn't been any, that place has been a junkyard since 1970. There's no contamination that's come up. The DEP looks at the paperwork. I don't even get a copy until after DEP gets it. It goes from me, DEP, to Stan, and they're all done accordingly.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And my question was, is if there's no evidence of anything changing, from an environmental perspective, based on the tests that we do have to guide us, there's no change from Stan's perspective other than some improvements to the site. We're not in violation anywhere currently. I don't know that we can't not deliberate and go through this. It feels to me like to his point, we don't want to be in this position again where we're dealing with this on a legal basis. We don't have anything that I see that we would be deliberating as far as violations or changes to what we have.
And I get that, but I'd at least like to look at the previous findings of fact, and I get all these points. I guess my point is there's no harm in waiting 2 weeks. He's able to continue operating his business. What harm is there waiting 2 weeks about this?
I'm not suggesting there's any. Excuse me, I keep tapping the microphone with my glasses. I was just giving you my perspective.
Yep, that's fair. I guess, Ashley, what do you think?
Processing. I think a lot of the things that Meryl brought up was interesting to kind of have, I kind of wish I had known them a little bit more before the site walk so I can kind of see it as I was going. But after hearing Stan and Sean address all those issues in one way or another and just kind of processing it still.
We're going to have issues from today, we're going to have them next week. Errol Farron has a love affair for me, and that's no matter what I do, whether it's at CIA Salvage or Rangy Road. We just went to court with him on that. We've spent thousands of dollars over there with attorneys, and he's just in love with me, and that's where we're at. So no matter what he brings up, there hasn't been any change. We've done everything we're supposed to do. We're working with the DEP to put in the pad, and other than that, we're in compliance. Every time I come to the board, Rangy, I've been 5 years fighting for that. Appeals boards, court, and then we went to that, the appeals board on Rangy over there, and then the town attorney told you to drop it. We spent $10,000 on Merrill's appeal, helping him get where he wants, and then he ended up dropping it because it's wrong. And I feel like I get railroaded every time I come here. This should be cut and dry. We put it out to the voters changed it because we have Carroll influence, Aaron's influence in it. I'm the only one out of this whole damn town that has to come here every 2 years for a conditional use permit. Nobody else has to. I have no contamination, nothing. And I'm gonna get postponed again, and we're gonna, keep on fighting down the road. How long is this permit gonna take? Another year, another $10,000?
Is it possible to kind of combine the two so it doesn't have to do this every single year?
No.
Change the ordinance.
Merrill?
Yeah, I think we've kind of, so just lessons learned from the past, we've kind of closed the public comment.
It's not public about this, he's made accusations, so I just want to say, you can not recognize me, that's fine.
Yeah.
But what he said are there's inaccuracies, major amounts of them, and that's why I wanted to speak, because I don't like when someone's falsely stated.
I understand that. I don't want this to divulge into a discussion that does not pertain to this application. I know that your other application was brought up. I'd like to just not bring that up again. Let's focus on Route 5 and move forward.
We need to move forward, be professional, do what you guys have been elected to do, and you have a job to do. I have a job to do. Mine's to protect everything that I have, the environment and everything else.
Yeah.
And there's nothing there that says I am not doing what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. I guess to that point, the town has said they'd like us to review your permit every so many years. I think it's in our best interest to take the time to review it and consider public comment, no matter who it's from.
We've had it a month.
Yeah, but this is the first time I've seen the property. This is the first time other board members have seen the property. And I don't see the harm in waiting another week and giving me a chance to review the previous findings of fact. So where we are right now with the board, it seems like we're kind of split. So I'm gonna motion that we postpone this to next meeting, and we can vote and see where we go from there. Is there a second?
I'll second the postponement. One meeting.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. So all in favor? All right. Opposed?
I'd rather get it done, but I understand where you're coming from. So I'll oppose, but you guys can take the floor on that.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd rather get this done.
I just want to quickly remind you, there is a state statute that governs you from time frames from the time the application is accepted until it is actually approved or denied. So the time started when you accepted the application. And I don't remember if it's 30 or 45 days, but there is a time limit on that. So
We accepted the application on the 5th, right?
and if you continue it, that won't be allowed unless it's agreed on with the applicant. But that's the statute that's never ever been relayed to the planning board before. So it's not the planning board's fault, but I do want you to make aware of that. That is, you are on time constraints for a timely fashion. It's not to put pressure, it's just to make sure things are done in time.
So we voted on it the last meeting, which was on the 5th, to accept the application, correct? It's not when we receive it, it's when we accept it, right? Okay, so we're on the clock as of March 5th to either 30 or 45 day.
Yeah. And
Cutting it close.
I want to make my intentions very clear. My intention is to vote on this next meeting. I do not want this to drag out. I think we've learned a lot, or I personally learned a lot about not allowing the opportunity to open this several times for public comment. But I personally need more time to evaluate. This is my first time with this property, and so, yeah. So we've decided. I mean, we've voted 2-1. So we're going to pick this up next meeting, April 2nd. All right. I guess with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'd make a motion that we adjourn tonight.
All right. Second. All in favor? All right. Thanks.